Hey Morgan, wanted to give you just some feedback on the first video that you sent me with your drop ball. One, I think it's great that you're using the barrier to throw over. That's going to be really helpful in terms of just seeing your movement, visualizing it. So really great job there. First I want to break down some mechanical things, and this will go back to really any of your pitches. You want your mechanics to stay the same, your movements to stay the same through everything, and it shouldn't change just based on a certain pitch you're throwing. So you can think of these things whether you're throwing fastball, changeup, drop, whatever it may be. So the first thing I noticed here is that the hand is just in a little bit of a tough position. So with your hand you can see it kind of pointed out to the side here. And what that does is right now, that's just making your shoulder a little bit tense, a little bit tight. Ideally, I'd like to see your hand instead, the back of the hand remain pointed forward towards your target, because that's going to allow you to continue in a straight line as you pull back into the rest of your circle. Right now, and you'll see this as we move forward, you're going to have to do right there an additional rotation to come forward through your pitch. So one other thing to think about right here too is now the back of the hand is facing backwards, where again ideally on this upswing the back of the hand should be pulling towards your target, kind of if you think about up in the air as well, so that it maintains good positioning and you're not having to do any extra rotations with your arm to bring your circle around. I'd also like to mention there's a little bit of distance here between the hips. So the closer we can keep the arm swing by the hip, usually the tighter our arm circle is going to be, and it's going to stay nice and smooth in one motion without deviating from its path either to the left or to the right. All right, from here you can start to see, let me actually back this up. So back to the beginning, the foot straight, and then as you go forward, it's starting to turn right through here. So that's another thing to think about, just the connection between your feet, your hips, your shoulders, just making sure we want the shoulders, hips, and toes ideally to stay in the direction of the target as long as possible. So really, when we get to 9 o'clock, which is about when the arm's here, so we'll get to that position in a minute, want everything to stay centered, to keep our knees and our hips and our shoulders in line as long as possible so that we're creating consistency in our body movements. So we get to here and you can see how you're getting pretty good extension with this leg, but our foot is already sideways here. So in this position moving forward, what I want you to work on is staying more on the very tip of your toes here with your push, trying to get those laces a little bit more forward as opposed to the laces pointing in that direction. All right, so moving on to, we'll talk about the front foot and the back foot at landing. So this would be your power position. So again, I want to talk about the positioning of the feet, the hips. Right now, at your landing position, you can see that the right leg is pointing backwards away from your target, and the front leg is pointing to the side. So if you were thinking you were on a field, your front foot is more pointing towards shortstop a little bit. And what this does is it just means, one, your front leg is having a hard time getting to external rotation of the front hip, which is something that we would like to maintain, because if you think about how you walk, how you run, everything we do, everything that's powerful, our toes and our hips and everything stay in line and they go in the direction that we're trying to go. So right now, what this is basically telling your body is that you are trying to throw this way as opposed to this way. So as you go to correct this, what we want to look for is the front foot pointing somewhere between this angle. So somewhere between really a 45-degree angle and less towards the catcher. So we want to look for that moving forward, and we also want to try to get your back foot, again, toes down and laces facing forward rather than laces facing away from you. So this just puts you in a more powerful position and a healthier position. Right now you're using, as you pull through the rest of this pitch, you're going to be using the adductors and abductors of your legs rather than using your glutes, hamstrings to kind of pull you through. So we want to use the bigger muscles that are easier to train as opposed to the smaller muscles. The last thing we'll look at in this position is your hand position. So right here, you can see that the ball is starting to point down a little bit. Ideally here we want to lead with the elbow and keep the palm up and facing forward because that keeps your shoulder in external rotation, and it's just a much healthier and safer spot to pull the arm down, create a lot more arm whip, and to start to use the hips to drive your pitch through. So you can see as we pull down, it's more of a push. So anytime that our hand is pushing us down in that direction, we are putting a little bit more stress on our bicep to slow it down rather than maintaining that external rotation with the shoulder and letting the elbow lead into a natural arm whip. So this also kind of causes you to get a little bit forward on that pitch. That may be because you're thinking about throwing a drop ball, but even when we're throwing a drop, we really want to maintain our posture, staying nice and tall, and making sure that we're transferring the weight from our backside to our front side by using our hips. So right now, we're kind of losing the leg drive towards the back. So you can see here you land, and now it's just all arm doing that work. So that's really difficult on the small muscles in the arm that aren't very strong. So what I'd like to see you do moving forward is just to use your hips more to drive your arm through, and that's going to increase your power and also just provide a healthier way to throw a little bit harder.